Kryptina slowly backed away until she noticed some blood dripping from her neck. The bite from that vampire kid. He must have been able to smell that too. Kryptina felt a little better when she saw Snowy hop onto the table. She meowed. Snowy looked at her, tilting her head, wondering if she was going to come out. Kryptina slowly turned away and tried to exit, but before she could, a vampire suddenly flew in her face, hanging upside down, hissing at her. She then noticed his hair. He was that same short, blonde-haired vampire she met in the forest, where the sheep were standing next to it. She remembered when she tried to stake him before her brother showed up. "Human!" the short, blonde-haired vampire hissed. "Ah!" Kryptina screamed and quickly turned away to see another vampire in her face. This time it was the long, brown-haired one with the glowing red eyes. "Please don't kill me." Kryptina quickly shielded herself, holding up her arms. "Ha! I do what I want." The brown-haired vampire leaped down over the table to greet her. He then smiled at her. "You should thank me." He opened his hands. "For what?" Kryptina was standing there with confusion. "I saved you." He pointed his finger on her nose for a second. "Saved me? You bit me," Kryptina complained, showing him the bite mark on her neck. "Well, you hit me in the sneezer a few times, and besides, you came into my forest," the brown-haired vampire complained, waving his hand. Kryptina suddenly narrowed her eyes and began to feel irritated. "Your forest?" She waves her hand back at him. "They're our forest. Your vampires are attacking the sheep and the people." The brown-haired vampire narrowed his eyes back at her. "They should be staying closer to the city, and so should you, human," he teases. "Now, let's see." The brown-haired vampire leaped on top of her. "How are you?" He closely checks her face. "Do you have any night vision? In the dark? Any fangs?" "Hey, get off!" Kryptina said with annoyance, trying to throw him off. "Any pale skin?" He jumps off her and looks closely at her neck. "Hey, stop it! That's mine!" Kryptina pushes him away. "Okay, now let me fix it, before it's too late." The brown-haired vampire quickly grabbed her by her arms, and he lifted his wrist towards himself, and he began to break skin of his own, causing it to bleed. "Hey, get off of me!" Kryptina cried, quickly backing away from him. "Will you stop?" He rolled his eyes with annoyance. "Let me fix it!" he cried, grabbing her arm again. "Fine." He slowly placed blood around her bite mark, and all of a sudden, the bite mark vanished. "There you go. It never happened." The brown-haired vampire turned away. Kryptina slowly backed up at him with surprise. Snowy jumped onto her shoulder and purred. "Hey, you did heal Snowy." The brown-haired vampire turned towards her. "Yes, I healed your kitty, healed your bite mark, and saved your life." The brown-haired vampire opened his hands. "Goodbye." Kryptina wanted to leave until she noticed a strange painting on the wall. "Wait, who is that?" Kryptina pointed at the painting of the two vampires and a baby. One of the vampires was a male vampire dressed in a black with a cape, while the female vampire was dressed in a black gown with spider webs on it. The baby was wrapped in a white cloth. It must have been a newborn for sure. Kryptina was curious to know who they were, but before she could ask again, the brown-haired vampire stood next to his vampire friends. "You better go, or my vampires will suck the blood out of you." "Wait, what?" Kryptina lifted her hands towards her face as if she was going to shield herself from a tiger. "Oh no, too late. They're gonna suck the blood out of you." The brown-haired vampire flickered his hands with a smile, showing his long fangs. "Ah!" Kryptina quickly rushes out of the castle, with Snowy rushing from behind her. The brown-haired vampire looked at his friends, lifting a brow, and waved his hands towards the entrance where Kryptina and Snowy took off. His vampire friends looked at one another. "What? Oh," the blonde-haired vampire boys said. Just then, they took off as if they were being chased by mad hunters. Kryptina stopped to catch her breath. Snowy stopped behind her. She and Snowy were standing under a waterfall. Kryptina felt relieved, seeing none of the vampires were following her, until all of a sudden, she saw a school of bats come flying out of the castle towards her. The brown-haired vampire was in the lead. "Run away, human! The vampires are after you!" "Ah!" Cryptina and Snowy began to run through the forest. Just then, the vampires were flying close to her, while Snowy ran in another direction. "Ah! Get away!" Cryptina cried, continuing to run away. "But you're so slow! Scared your shadows you so are!" the brown-haired vampire cried. The brown-haired vampire then jumped next to her and transformed back into himself, running next to her. What would a human know about vampires? He smirked at her and he quickly grabbed Cryptina's bag. "Hey, stop! That's my gear for hunting!" Cryptina cried. "Oh, a vampire hunter!" He takes out a wooden stake and throws it away. "A little kid like you," he smirks. "Well, you're a kid too." Cryptina's eyes looked at him for a second. "I'm no kid. I'm a vampire." He flickers his fingers and shows his long fangs to her. "Up you go." The short blonde-haired vampire grabbed her by the collar. "When I sleep, it's in the morning. When it's nighttime, I'm me, Alaric von Horrificus, the feared and future leader of the vampire school," he shouted with joy, lifting his fist up in the air. He lowers his hand. "So, what's your name?" "Cryptina." She felt nervous being surrounded by a school of vampires. I like Cryptinas. Their blood smells so fresh and they taste so sweet." Alaric licks his fangs. "They scream and they run, but they can't get away from me, though." As Alaric was speaking, Cryptina grabbed the blonde-haired vampire's claws and opened them, causing her to fall. She landed on her feet and immediately rushed into the bushes of the forest. She then kneeled with a giggle in one of the bushes, hoping they wouldn't find her. Now, where did she go? Alaric looked back and forth, walking around. He suddenly turned to look at the bushes where Cryptina was hiding in. Alaric was just about to look in the bushes, but before he could, he suddenly flew upside down. "Whoa!" Cryptina steps out with a laugh. "Some vampire leader. Ha! Let me down!" Alaric cried, hanging upside down from a rope. "Hey, I saved your life!" Alaric cried. Cryptina steps towards Alaric and unties him. He transformed into a bat and transformed back into himself again. "And now I saved yours," Cryptina poked with a tease. She giggled at him. "Stop being so annoying. It's not funny, you know," Alaric cried, pointing at her. "And besides, I know these vampire traps like the back of my head." He steps onto a rope and he suddenly flew upside down. "And yet you get trapped again," Cryptina teased. "Let me down!" Alaric points, making fists. "Well," Cryptina steps towards him. If you say so." Alaric, the feared and future leader of the vampire school, she teased, untying him. "Ha ha ha, very funny." Alaric rolled his eyes with annoyance, making fists and resting them on his hips. As Cryptina untied him, he transformed back into a bat and transformed back into himself again. "Well, are you done getting stuck in traps again?" Cryptina teased, stepping towards him. "Or are you—" She was cut off when Alaric rested his hand on her face. "Shh! I smell a human. I'll take care of it." He and the vampires rushed to the small open area of the forest. Cryptina's smile suddenly faded when she realized that the sun was beginning to rise. Chester would be out at this time of the day, setting more vampire traps. She couldn't let Alaric and his school destroy or terrorize him. "Oh no, Chester!" she said, opening her hands with worry. Cryptina immediately rushed into the vines to see a human wearing silver armor and brown clothing. He was setting a rope trap, wiping the scent of garlic on it and tying the rope to the tree. As Cryptina slowly looked closer, she noticed it was her brother who was there, setting the traps like he always does. Cryptina knew that vampires and humans don't get along. What is she going to do now?